Well, thanks for staying with us on the program this morning. It's about time for us to have a broad conversation as it concerns the hashtag End Bad Governance protesters, many of whom were seen on the courtroom. Many Nigerians say that they are but minors and should be tried in line with juvenile laws. Now, to give us legal perspective on this matter this morning, we're joined by Mr. Alex Ogbo, Esquire, who is a chartered mediator and human rights activist. Good morning to you, Mr. Alex, and welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure being here.
Now, let's get straight into this matter. The challenge was that the said arrested detainees were hoisting a foreign flag. Much of what people are saying would constitute treasonable felony. But many Nigerians reacting to the footage, a lot of us saw, are saying that they are not adults and such trials would have no basis. What do you make of these developments in keeping with how the law operates in matters like this?
Permit me to take some background to this issue. We expected so much understanding, freedom of association, freedom of the press from this government, because when they were in opposition, when PDP was in power, they were heavily involved in demonstrations. Our current president was fully involved in demonstrations, issues of Take Back Nigeria and Occupy Nigeria.
Occupy Nigeria.
Yes. In 2012, for 2 weeks and more, all these protests were on with so many people involved that made the former President Jonathan to rescind the decision of deregulation, of removing a subsidy when it was even the best time to do it. And everybody was happy. They were happy about it. Now they are in power. We expected that they will rather encourage people voicing and ventilating their views on issues that affect the populace. But we are surprised that this same regime that always stood on the part of the masses when they were in opposition will not under any circumstance accommodate any voice of dissent. Is most unfair, is most uncharitable, is most unexpected. And that confirms what, there are this proverb from the Southeast, which is also common in Africa. A person who kills with machete, do not allow someone with knife to go behind him or her, believing that maybe you're also after him or her. That's exactly what is going on with this regime. You see, the hardship in the country is initiated by the government.
Now, that's another basic talking point in terms of the nomenclature of what the protest was tagged.
Yes.
Much like you rightly referred to the Occupy Nigeria protest.
Yes.
Some call this protest End Hunger protest.
Yes.
Others called it End Bad Governance protest, which a lot of persons feel is not sitting well with the current administration. Do you see any concerns on the nomenclature and the genuity of the protests that took place in the month of October?
You see, the tag given to the protest is not even the main issue. Is the unwillingness to allow any freedom of association or freedom of the press on the part of the government. The people tagging it may not even be well informed on the use of nomenclature to talk of end bad governance. End bad governance suggests that the regime should be booted out. And to them now, they want to protect their occupation of power. But it's end hunger that is the right thing. And in doing that, what was the motivation? The complaint is that there's hunger in the land, there's hardship. There should be a solution. Something should be done immediately. Don't overlook it. That was what the main issue is. Now, a reasonable government will look at the subject matter, the content of the opposition or the reaction and all that, and you tackle it from that angle. They are not taking up arms to say they are organizing a coup. They have not done that. All right. Yes, some of them made some mistakes because a protest is different from vandalization of public property, which should not be allowed or encouraged at all.
Which was more like a riot other than a protest.
Thank you. Because some do not know what protest means, especially in this northern part of the country. Most northerners do not understand protest. Protest is different from destruction, wanton destruction, looting of public property, which should not be allowed. The law doesn't allow it in the first place at all. Some of them went into looting, which was not okay. And some of them were bearing foreign flags, asking Russia to come to their rescue. You know, that is rather a confused, just a kind of a confused state of affairs. But you see, the government went for an overkill. That's where the bone of contention is. The government went for an overkill. We want this country to come to a point where people who wield power should be able also to educate the misguided. For instance, if somebody is taken to the police station, we don't expect that once you are taken to the police station, you must be detained by the police. No, we expect the police who went through training to be able to discuss with you and give you guidance. This is right, this is wrong, don't do this, don't do that. Seeing that there's nothing serious in issue, the person should be let go. That's what a civilized security organization should do.
And this brings me to the question of the place of bail.
Yes.
Because we saw bail being also placed for these minors, and the humongous amount being demanded for is causing worry. Yes, you had listed some of the mistakes that they made based on misguidance or misinformation, like you said. But since they were arrested, what would have been the best process for them to have been processed? Let me use the word processed, not detained.
Now, you see, our law is clear. When somebody is arrested on suspicion of committing a crime, the person should not be detained more than 48 hours, more than 2 days, where there's a court that is not far away, you know, within the radius, 40 kilometers radius. All right? But these ones have been kept for 93 days.
And now 40 kilometers radius, they were detained in Kano and brought to Abuja.
There are enough courts in Abuja when they were brought. What necessitated they are being kept for 93 days is most unconscionable. It's rather just the issue of impunity. It's issue of impunity. And now, being arraigned, and the judge is granting them bail in the tune of 10 million each, and 2 shorties in large sum. Actually, when such pronouncement is made, it doesn't mean that the person must produce 10 million to be bailed. What he's saying is that when the person is to be taken on bail by anybody, the person should make sure you produce this person in court anytime the person is needed for trial. In the event that the person John Bell escapes and could not come to court, then you, the shorty, is now expected to produce that money. That's the implication. But also that money is too crazy. 10 million for teenagers. You see, civilized crimes do not behave like this. So this government is bringing opprobrium to themselves, disrespect to themselves. Looking at them, actually, when you talk of crime, if a minor commits a crime, like you mentioned, there are juvenile courts for their own. You know, they have to be tried not as adults because they are not of age. All right? But where the problem started is detaining them for 93 days. That's where the government got it all wrong entirely.
Now, Mr. Alex, even in their detention,
yes,
there is word in the wind that they were detained in the Kuje Correctional Center, which does not have any juvenile
center
facility. Now, there's also a contrary claim from the part of the government dispelling that. What do you make of this counterclaim?
No, I should expect that Kuje should have a juvenile facility. Kuje is not small. I should expect that Kuje should have a juvenile facility. But their outlook shows that they were uncatered for.
Some malnourished, some collapsing.
They were malnourished, they were not. You see, these are the things. And these young ones are the ones that we talk of being leaders of tomorrow. Even if they are convicted, they will serve out their jail times and still come out alive by the grace of God. And these people are coming back to the society, coming with all kinds of impressions that will descend on this society because of the way they were handled. So the government have not done right by the way they handled this particular issue. The fact that they have been kept for 93 days should make the government to know that the government has violated our laws, which they know. And because of that, there are things that you have to do when you are in the wrong. 93 days. You shouldn't be talking of detention. You should be talking of summary trial. You know, also the kind of charges on them, treasonable felony, it's laughable. It's laughable. Some of them did some vandalization, all right? But you see, when you use a sledgehammer to pursue an ant, even the society knows that you are not normal. So that is what this government has brought on itself. And I believe that that's what made the Attorney General of the Federation to quickly wade in. They want to take over the matter, all right? So that they will try to do damage control. Because a lot of damages have been done by this government intentionally, which is not healthy. See, let me make this point. The government were looking for those who are sponsoring protests. Government policy is sponsoring the protests, not Nigerians. Look at, go anywhere. In Nigeria now, the only thing that is not increasing is income. That's the truth. Expenses are increasing. The cost of getting international passport has risen. To renew the license, whether it's motorcycle or tricycle or vehicle, it has increased. Taxes have increased. VAT has increased. Electricity tariff has increased. Transportation costs has. You don't talk of the cost of food, and the increase is on daily basis. On daily basis, when the Labour was agitating for 70,000 minimum wage, they were saying, well, it will just buy a bag of rice. A bag of rice is 100 and something now, 1,000. December has not come. So it's likely going to get to 150.
We'll come to issues of the current state of the nation and the economic reforms that we need to embark upon as a people. But staying with this minors now, you've talked about how illy they have been treated.
Yes.
In terms of compensation, a summary trial, do you think that the court of law would also proscribe some sort of compensation, especially to families, much like we see some saying that they thought their children were dead?
You see, the most painful thing is that most of these people, if not all, are among the poorest of the poor. They are from poor backgrounds. Otherwise, their fundamental human rights have been violated, extremely violated by this government. Their families are supposed to initiate action for fundamental rights, all right, abuse of fundamental rights, and go for damages. And they will get the damages. They will get the damage. 93 days in detention. They will get substantial damages awarded in their favor. That's actually what their families should do. But if you're expecting this regime, even if they now decide to withdraw the charges, and you're expecting this regime to compensate them, they will not do that, except the court orders them to do it. And that is through initiation of action for fundamental rights infringement, for damages in that. It's through their families and through their councils that will be done, and a court judgment will effect it. But if you're expecting this government, even if they withdraw the charges to compensate, they will not do that.
Now, let's also not forget that since a number of them are teenagers,
yes,
there's also the conversations for the Child Rights Act, which Nigeria is a signatory to.
Yes.
Do you think that this is one of those antecedents that would question our position in keeping with the Child Rights Act in Nigeria?
It is. But that Child Rights Act also needs to be activated through process of the court. Someone must have to initiate a court process citing those laws to use it against what the government has done. That's the way it works. It doesn't just activate itself, because there's this language we use that the court is on Father Christmas. It is what you demand and you prove that you get. So that Child Rights Act had to be activated through the court process against the government in order to see it work. Otherwise, it will just be a mere discussion.
Now, there's also the question of international perspective.
Yes.
The larger world is looking at Nigeria,
yes,
and it's owing to October 2020, where we had End SARS protests. Now we have End Bad Governance protests. Detainees who were not adequately compensated.
Yes.
What do you think this does for Nigeria in the perspective of the Committee of Nations?
It is total demarketing. It's total demarketing of this country. This government knows it. They are demarketing this country consciously. They are. And without any reservation. They are demarketing this country. And in demarketing this country, later you tell us that investors are coming. Investors do not just go to a place because you are making noise about it. They look at the indices. So they are demarketing this country. They are painting our country in bad light. And they are displaying crass incompetence in leadership. Yes, that's what it is. So that's what this government is doing, and they know it. So the earlier they start rectifying these things, the better. You see, during 1st October, there was a demonstration also. What the tag they used. The ones that came out in Abuja, the government used the security to scatter them through tear gas again. But this regime also gathered people, especially the National Association of Nigerian Students, the executives, and gathered them with security all over the place to demonstrate in favor of the government. That had been the attribute of the APC right from the time of Buhari. When there's a genuine protest, they will scatter the genuine protest and produce their own protest and protect and portray. But doing all those things do not in any way put them in good light. It shows, unnecessary defensive tactics against their errors which they unleash on the citizens. So they are demarcating the country, that is clear. And the earlier they wake up to it, the better.
Now we're seeing calls from SERAP. SERAP is issuing a 48-hour ultimatum for the release of these detained minors. Do you think the government of the day would heed this call?
Well, I have not seen the government inclined to that based on the antecedents. I have not seen that. The only thing is that the wording in by the Attorney General gave me some hope. Why? Because this particular Attorney General have been taking some bold steps. He brought about the issue of local government autonomy in initiation and action against the states, at the Supreme Court, which is very interesting, So that shows that he has a healthy mind. Of course, he's a very seasoned attorney. All right. Now he's wading into this. One will expect him also to try to, redeem the image of this government by doing the needful, by heeding, like they call from Serap and others, because there will be more calls. There's nobody that watch that arraignment that will not revolt. There's nobody, even an authoritarian government watching that around the world that will not revolt. It's most awkward. And I don't envy the judge before whom those young ones were arraigned. I don't envy the judge. The thing has put heavy load on the judge, very heavy load. But the angle that I think the judge should have taken some further cautions is the issue of the
bail pronouncement.
Yes, 10 million. You look at the people. I mean, that shows that they must be in detention until whenever this matter.
They find that shorty in like some two, which they're required to.
And we had to get such shorties for minors.
Now, there's another angle to this story, much like you talked about revolution. The North is feeling aggrieved. Just in the space of 5 days, Northern governors, particularly led by Bala Mohammed, who's been very vocal as saying that the North is being marginalized in a way. They had talked about kicking against the tax reform bills. And this morning, he was talking about the fact that the North needs to unite against such an injustice. The presidency has come to refute that. It doesn't have any agenda against the North. And in a Nigeria that has been polarized around ethnicity and regionalism, do you think that this is one of those telltale signs that needs to be arrested and nipped in the bud to avert a breakdown in law and order, particularly in the North?
You see, where I would disagree with Bala Mohammed and others, what we expect our governors to be doing is not to be ethnic jingoists, just standing for your own personal gain. They are leaders in the society. They need to champion the cause of every Nigerian, regardless of where you're coming from. You see, it's not until the injustice visits your house that you come out. That's exactly what they're trying to do now, to talk that these people are mostly from the North. NSAS protests were predominantly the Southerners. In fact, the North stood against NSAS protests. They did vehemently, openly, by all means. They stood against that. So it was mostly demonstration by the Southerners. and Southerners were massacred in their numbers. So does it mean that they not celebrated that massacre with all the injustice meted out? And now that the demonstrations in this and the bad governance were predominantly Northerners, and now talking of marginalized, what of the Southerners? That NSAS protesters, some of them are still in detention. So it will be most unhealthy for them to bring out that idea. It's not, I don't buy into that. What we expect is, let justice be done. Let things be corrected. That's the kind of thing I expect to hear from people who have occupied positions. Bala Mohammed have been in the National Assembly, so he's a nationalist. Talking of the North, that belittles him and all the people in his ilk. That's not what they should be talking about. The issue of the tax, they should not be talking of it. It's not affecting the Northerners more than the Southerners. They should be talking of how that should be made to be assuaged, to be to the betterment of every Nigerian. The Southerners are not benefiting from it. In fact, a good number of policies, like I said, what this regime is doing, they are squeezing life out on Nigerians.
Now, one person who shares this sentiment and also has been very vocal about it is the former VP Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, who also received knocks from the presidency when he said that the APC should have borrowed some of his manifestos, citing the gradual removal of subsidy. He says if he were to have been president, it wouldn't have been done at once. Do you think that this call from an opposition should be one that should be greeted with some empathy, other than the knocks it's receiving from the presidency, who is saying that the country would have been far worse should Alhaji Atiku have been president?
It's not only Atiku that have been bringing that proposition. P2B have been talking of the same thing, because the major contenders during the election in 2023 presidency, they all stood in favor of removal of subsidy. But the approach is what differs. So what Atiku is saying is not different from what P2B is saying, and that is the right thing. What they are talking about, you shouldn't have foisted it on people just instantly like that, without any safeguards, without arrangements on how to ensure that this thing eventually comes in when there are safeguards to cushion the effect. But this government just came unilaterally and, without any kind of caution, jumped into this. It's just like somebody jumping on the rail when the train is coming. That's what this government had done. So what Atiku is saying, they are talking about condemning it, they are getting it wrong. They should be able to listen to voice of reason. That is the issue. What is the crucial effect that this government has done? They were talking of palliatives. Our president promised pensioners that last year, October to December 2023, all pensioners will receive 25,000 per month for 3 months. Up till now, it has not been implemented. The civil servants were to be paid, was it 30 or 35,000 for 6 months? It was because Labour, NLC protested and all, they pay civil servants. Pensioners, they don't have the money to gather themselves around and demonstrate. Their own have not been attended to. So you can see, you make promises you cannot keep because you jumped into this issue of subsidy removal without the necessary processes. And when you are talking about palliatives to Nigerians, it is not a matter of palliatives, because you don't know who gets it. They will be quoting millions. But all the people around us in villages, I've not seen any of our relations from my state or from where I live here that has benefited from that. But you'll be hearing of millions who have received this thing, poorest or the poor that. It doesn't work like that way.
The question now is our social register. Yes, there has been a minister designate over humanitarian affairs and poverty reduction who is to be sworn in today by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. That ministry has been greeted with quite the controversies dating to its handling over the years.
Yes.
But till tomorrow, Nigerians do not know who the poorest of the poor are, and we continue to call for an adequate social register. Do you think we can achieve that social register in the coming months?
If there is sincerity, it is achievable, but not the way they do it. Because what has been going on is just political patronage. They gather the people that supported them at the grassroots, put their names together and call it National Social Register. It is wrong. If there is sincerity of purpose, social register can be produced. And they will do it without fear of favor. Eventually, we will have it functional, but not the way they're going about it. So we don't have functional social register now. What we have is just a pack of people that supported the government. during elections at the local, the ward, the state, the national, they assemble them together to compensate them. That's the kind of thing that is bandied about a social register. But if there's sincerity of purpose, we can have a functional social register. Abroad, it happens. It happens because of honesty. But here, there's no sincerity of purpose there. That's why we don't have a functional social register we can talk about.
Now, let's also consider the place of a national census and population exercise, which for the largest now, 18 years and counting, has not been conducted for proper planning at a national level, especially in judicious use of our budget. Is this also part of the mitigating challenges that needs to be enforced?
You know, towards the dying days of Buhari's regime, he invested in the national population to conduct a census. And the national population had gone to a very large extent, very far. In fact, at the verge of conducting the census, Buhari terminated the idea and left it open to this regime, which if this regime is minded, they can just latch in on that because so much have been spent. Billions of dollars have been spent in the budget about census in Nigeria, which have occurred sometime in 2023. So it will be easy for this government to just finish it up. Because all they need to do is just some minor adjustment they will make, some areas that have not been attended to, and census could happen. And with that, we can get credible record that will help not only this regime, but subsequent regime, because it's long overdue. It's long overdue. So it is true. We need proper data that census can generate. And we are at the verge of doing it. This government needs to get it fulfilled. It should not be allowed to go down the drain. It will be a disservice if this government do not conclude the issue of the national census that has almost been concluded, almost been carried out. For me, as I said, I blame Buhari. Having got to the point, because debt have been fixed. He should have got this thing done. November 2022, census was to hold. But along the line, they play politics about it. But this regime, I believe that this regime knows the importance. We can't do without functional data. Now, all of us are abandoning data. Nigeria is 220 million, Nigeria is 230 million, and other. Because guesswork. But when there's census, we can get workable data from it. We need it.
Now, Mr. Alex Ogboo, Esquire, chartered mediator and human rights activist on the program this morning, is advocating for functional data to address some of Nigeria's challenges. This advocacy is stemming from the detained minors during the hashtag End Bad Governance protest, who now have a 10 million naira bail condition with two shorties in like sum before they can be freed. Now, Mr. Alex has questioned such a humongous amount as bail for teenagers. He's also referencing the need for a juvenile trial system and a summary trial to dismiss such detainees. He's also of the opinion that this protest, dubbed End Bad Governance protest, would have been rightly nomenclatured End Hunger protest, which he says is the root cause and the actual sponsor of the protest. He says the government of the day is distracted looking for outright sponsors instead of tackling the hunger. And he's also preferring that they listen to the voice of reason from the opposition and the likes of the presidential candidates of the Labour Party and PDP, Mr. Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar, respectively, in mitigating some of the challenges affecting Nigeria. Now, in coming back to the conversation, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar is also asking that there be privatization and modernization of some of the refineries in the country. He's saying that passing the bulk to Dangote alone would not fix some of the challenges in our petroleum industry, which is largely a cause of the hunger in the country. Do you think he has some points of reason there?
He has clear points. Why? When Buhari was, holding his campaign, Buhari promised us that when he comes to power, he was going to build, 4 refineries per term or something like that. 4 refineries, meaning that he should have been able to build about 8 refineries in 8 years. He got to the place, there was not even an initiation of any kind of effort toward that. the repair could not even be effected. It was not effected all through the 8 years. All the refineries, and there was always this time, turnaround maintenance with heavy amount invested, which was frittered away, and it still continues. When you look at that, you discover that the truth remains that the earlier that these refineries are privatized, the better. Private entities are business-minded. If someone said the government has no business in business, because the way civil servants operate, they are not using the ethics of business to run. Their own is, I work, you pay me, I go my way, all right? And then everything gets dilapidated. It's just like these buses we call A-Refi buses. Most of them are abandoned, they're not maintained. Private individuals cannot do it like that. They will replenish the buses and make it working and increase. So privatization will be helpful for the country. But the truth is that those at NNPC will not want it because it's a cash cow to them. They are draining money from there. They won't want it to slip off their fingers. But privatization will be the best thing. So that private entities will come in and make it functional and make it result-oriented. That thing is very helpful. It has not profited us at all. When we were saying that NNPC have been privatized to be NNPCL, it became worse. They came into the whole thing and they are bastardizing it. When Dangote was a come on stream refinery, NNPCL went that they were to have the monopoly of taking over the produce from Dangote.
As the sole importer.
As sole importer. And where has it landed us? The cost that we are told will reduce is increasing per day. In fact, almost every week now. Every week, we hear of addition. So if it is privatized, like what happened in the telecom industry, no Nigerian can forget. When NITEL was operating, how many of us were having access to phone? Even as they have public booths, many of them were not working. You had to go to a friend that has, either in the house or in the office. But the moment there was that privatization in 2003, the whole tide changed. And you see that now travel is reduced. The use of all these Android phones has even removed the issue of going to a post office to use. You can now write letters.
Even cyber cafes.
Cyber cafes. You can use your handset. You use it for photograph. Use it for everything. And every Nigerian has it. And you see the way it is liberalized and is accessible to everybody because there are different types. That is what privatization can do to a country. If we allow these refineries to be privatized, we'll be able to have this thing functional. At least we know that they are working. Unlike what is up. See our rolling mill, Alaja, in Kogi State. It has got a point that it's worse than being ashamed. Every Nigerian we can't bury our head anywhere. We are buried and we have been exhumed from where we buried our heads. Because of that, and that's continued. If it's a private entity, it cannot be like that. For instance, look at the aviation. Like AP's coming in and all. Where is Nigerian Airways? Run by the government. That is it.
We also saw the masquerading of a Nigerian Airways project and how it went. But before we get into all of that, another policy and program of the current administration which has received knock from the opposition is the Naira flotation. Now, the exchange cap was removed by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But now this morning, Atiku is saying that if he were have to be president, he would have introduced what was known as a managed floating foreign exchange system to achieve stability for our Naira. Do you think that in working an exchange rate that will favor exporters and importers, this should have been the approach other than outrightly floating the Naira?
That is still in tandem with the initial issue we looked at, that removing subsidy in total instead of a gradual process is the problem. You remove subsidy, you floated the Naira. What that thing is like someone is in the restroom taking bath. You not only open the door, you remove the person's clothes and went with it. So that if the person managed to come out, the person is stark naked. That's what this government had done. You threw us into the cold blatantly. And you are not concerned because you have easy access to our collective patrimony. Our resources are with you, which they are filtering away. And you see some of them making statements that is in tandem with the attitude of drunkards. When the demonstrations were on, the Senate president said, if people go about demonstrating,
that was finally realized to have been doctored from a previous engagement. But now on the issue of some other policies that could be implemented,
yes,
especially on the regards to hunger, there was the policy of zero duty on importation for certain grains and commodities. But we heard this morning that up until now, in finding synergy between the Nigerian customs and those who are responsible for this importation, bureaucracy continues to stall the importation. At this point, is it that the executive is all to blame, or those on board with the cabinet who are saddled with these responsibilities are failing in their responsibilities?
The executive is to be blamed because the buck stops at his desk. If you give such instruction and you don't carry that, just like there was a cabinet reshuffle, you remove people that are heading these organizations and pick those who will be upbeat to get it work. So it shows that the government is just grandstanding. Yes, when you say remove this and it's not done, which will be to the benefit of the masses, you change the people who are frustrating it, because it means there are bottlenecks. For instance, one aspect that I will give a thumbs up to this government is in tackling insecurity. As the government asked the chief of defense staff and the security agencies to move to the theater of conflict, and they moved in there, you see there's a lot of improvement. That's one area that is getting right. Unlike what happened when Buhari asked, was it Minister of Defense or Chief of Defense also, to move to either Benue or that, the person didn't move, and he was saying he was surprised, and you did nothing. When it comes to issue of tackling insecurity, this government is getting it right. The same way, when you are saying that this duty should be removed and all, and somebody is sitting on it, you remove the person. But if you are not minded, you will just make a casual comment, because that is what we see it to be until it is implemented. When he said that, we were all happy that, okay, maybe when you get to the market, we could see a reprieve. But nothing has happened. It's worse. It's worse. Get to the market, anything, a tuber of yam,
3,000, 4,000.
That's
for the small tuber.
For the small tuber. A bigger one is 15,000 for a tuber of yam. A basket of tomato. Now that there's tomato because the rain has gone, but go and pick a basket. Nothing has improved. Nothing. And because of that, people are eating trash, feeding on trash, just to make soul and body meet. You talk of health care. My brother, you cannot afford to treat malaria now, except you are wealthy. Right from the test to the cost of the drugs. Before, you run a test, you go to government hospital, it's not up to 1,000 naira before. And then with 2,000, you have treated yourself. Now, 2,000 have not afforded you the test. Before you treat malaria effectively, you are talking about from 7,000 upwards, 8,000, 10,000 in a family of 6. Because at times, all the children will be down, including even the head of the house. How do you do that? And you see people resorting to all kinds of things, and people are dying anyhow. This is real. This is real. There's no need playing politics about it. So, the government should be sincere. Until we see it work in the way of reduced cost of items, the government has not done anything. That is the truth.
Now, we've looked at some of the solutions that stem from the executives, but looking at some of the homegrown solutions, yes, you've lauded them for efforts in fighting insecurity.
Yes.
Part of the issues we're having with food insecurity is the fact that a lot of farmers cannot access their farmlands. Now, the government, in its ingenuity, created a new Ministry of Livestock to deal with issues on farmers-headers clashes. But how about those for bandits who now impose levies on farmers before they can access their farmland? Is there a way that the government can also put in modalities in place to tackle this issue?
You know, when I lauded the government on the issue of fighting insecurity, you discover that these non-state actors that were imposing all that, most of them have been taken out. I know they are pursuing Bello Turji now, all right? Most of his allies have been knocked out. And because of that, the issue of that imposition of taxes by all these non-state actors is becoming a thing of the past. If the tempo is sustained, and there's need for it to be sustained, farmers need to be back to their farms. They need to be back to their farms. It's not negotiable. So the tempo should be sustained until that happens. If it is not done, even if you remove the duty on importation, it will still not work, because these things imported have to pass through the roads. The roads are not free. These people will kidnap those who are even carrying the food items, and they themselves are looking for food to eat too. So the government should not subpedal until we get it effectively done. They need to increase the tempo and make sure that there's access to the farms. All right? Then we can now say there's uhuru. But as it is, we are still at the middle of the road. So the government should know there's a lot to be done. And it will be to the good of everybody. You know, when the right things are not been done, you see the level of anger will be increased. For instance, you know the current case of a member of House of Arrest that had this issue with the
boat driver.
Boat driver. They don't know that they are overpaid, where a senator gets at least 14 million per month, like Senator Joseph Kalu had to admit, because most of them have been denying it. And he even said that it's not even enough, because he had to transport himself to his constituency to attend to people. We're talking of 14 million. It's not enough. But somebody is not allowed to get 70,000 in the same country for a month. And then this person that is struggling to get 70,000, you that flows in millions, will come and release that venom on the individual. Is man's inhumanity, the height of man's inhumanity to man. And most of these politicians have that inclination. They, you know, when they drive, they put you out with their siren and everything. They choke up everything that comes to the public, and they believe that they are the ones that need to have a meaningful life. But these other people are the dregs. It's because government policy has been too bad that the citizens are incensed against anybody in power. That is just where this thing is leading to. And the earlier they wake up to it, the better. Now, somehow they have been able to emasculate the organized labor. Somehow NLC have been put on check, which is not supposed to be. But if the government is thinking that they are free, having caged NLC, the one they do not know is the spontaneous outburst that they will force the masses to get to when they could not contain it again. You can see the reactions when those boys were brought to court. These are the kind of things that will make people like what we have in Arab Spring. Yes, people look at it and people cannot endure any longer. That outburst is not organized and government is fueling it.
Now, whilst in the case of these detained minors, there's empathy from a majority of Nigerians
Yes.
on the handling of the matter, there are also some corridors that are asking if there is a failure in the smallest unit of society, in the family, in being able to instill values and morals. Like you said earlier, in the North, there is a difficulty understanding the genuine intentions of protest. Do you think that the current hardship somehow has an interrelationship with the increase in crime rates and the failure of the family in upbringing?
That will bring us to something that is very important. You see, northern part of Nigeria, the earlier they come to the point to believe that there's need to checkmate the number of children someone should bring into the world, the better. But they don't even want to align with it. They want
in terms of family planning.
They hate family planning. In fact, there's this language that a woman must produce all the children that God has put in her belly, her womb. You know? And then you'll be counting your achievements in life, your prowess in life, with the number of children. I have 35 children, I have 45 children, I have that. Is that not the height of lack of sincerity? And because of that, you can't cater for these children. Because they are not catered for, these children get frustrated. And when they are frustrated, they vent anger on the society. You know, so nobody even offers them any training at all. When you're talking of there's nothing like training, not to talk of adequate. So with that, they are coming further for any kind of violence, for any kind of crime. Because their own is, they don't even see anything wrong in looting. They do it with a lot of joy, because as far as they're concerned, there was the case, I don't know if you watched it, where a truck failed and people gathered and were packing the grains that were in the truck, saying that God had brought food to them this morning. We have got food this morning. There's hunger. There's hunger. There's hunger in the land. Thank God we have got food this morning. But this is somebody's, investment. They are not thinking along that line. So with this number that are not trained, are not catered for, there's no way that insecurity will not increase. There's just no way about it. That's the thing. So if another brothers and sisters, we start thinking in that light to checkmate the number of children. IBB, when he was military head of state, came to that point of saying that there's need for a national policy that each couple should not have more than 4 children. Northerners attacked him vehemently. But from what is going on, they should tell themselves the truth, that they are not doing us any favor by mass producing children that are not trained. It is not achievement, it's disaster. Most of them now kill their parents. We do read that. Most of them get frustrated and bounce back on their parents, eliminate their parents, and then vest their anger on the society. So where is the goodness of it? Actually, it's a recipe, it's a time bomb, recipe for disaster. That is it.
Now, there's also been data about the number of out-of-school children in the country.
23 million or something.
Now, in keeping with the reforms we need in our education, we know not every child might be able to go through formal education. They have also come up with the Almajiri system of catering for some of these children. But the basic thing there is that education should also be in character and learning. And if these detained minors had a better education in them, they'll know better than to go about looting or vandalizing during the protest.
Yes.
In balancing these conversations, what solutions would you prefer?
Is the elite telling themselves the truth? Remember, during President Jonathan's regime, there was that effort to build a lot of schools for these Almajiris in the north. And they were done. But then this Minister of ACT, was Minister of State for Education. And most of those schools were built, but Northerners never made use of it. They didn't make use of it. They abandoned that system. All the investments were wasted. Where the government has even provided it for them to now allow the children to get into the system, they rejected it. So the elite in the north had to undergo a serious reorientation for the progress of the society. Because it is for the good of everybody, even to their own good more, because when this menace is curbed, they will have more peace, because the greatest trouble is in their midst, and the earlier they wake up to it, the better. So there's need to have, for instance, you mentioned the issue of this ministry created by the president, which is wonderful, Ministry for Livestock Development. And there was a Tuesday Live last week on it by Sirius Toba. It got some people, and they were giving analysis of the effort they are making going around the country. The major thing all over the world in success in livestock development is the issue of ranching, which we have been talking about. During Buhari regime, everybody was shouting for it, but he wasn't interested in it. You see? But ranching is the way to go. When you match a cow from Sokoto to Port Harcourt, even the cow gets annoyed and will attack the public. You overstress the cow, you can't even get meat in their body. Then the people who are taking the cow are the ones now kidnapping people, dragging people to the bush to even suffer people they will not suffer their cows. But if there's ranching, it's a comprehensive system where there you have school, there you have security, there you have hospital, there you have water, you have fodder and everything, and so many accessories are attached to it that makes life livable. And the animals produced from there are very healthy. You get greater quantity of beef, you get greater quantity of milk, like we see all over the world. So this is what this livestock development must do. Not the issue of talking on Ruga. No. Create ranches. And private entities are ready to invest in ranches. One, there's enabling law for it. That's what I expect this ministry to do. Let there be enabling environment, enabling law. So if private individual can invest, the country will benefit most. But then discover that our land mass will make Nigeria one of the greatest exporters of livestock. We have a vast space. We have good varieties of these fodder here. All right. The other time when Ogbo was Minister of Agri, we were trying to import some from Brazil. It's because we don't have ranches here. If we have ranches, Ranches create massive hectares of plots where further it generated different categories of it that we can even export. So those are the kind of things that we should be doing. The issue of that Ministry of Livestock is a kudos to this regime, but let it not be the issue of creating blueprints without implementation. Let it not be one of those white papers that will gather dust. Let the implementation be real and be genuine. Then we are good to go.
Now, Mr. Alex, in wrapping up this conversation, I would much like to agree that you're citing the need for engaging idle minds and not allowing them become the devil's workshop in some of these detained minors.
Yes.
But in closing, human rights lawyer and senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Femi Falana, is calling for an outright dismissal of the case against them. You've called for a summary trial, but in reintegrating some of these minors back into society and reuniting them with their family, what will be some of the social tools that human rights activists like yourself would look to explore?
Now, when I talked of summary trial, that statement is aimed at dismissal. Summary trial. Don't make it go the gamut of what we do see. Because when you look at that scenario, frankly speaking, there's nothing we will gain from trying and detaining those minors. The best we can do to them is to take them into correctional facility, give them vocational training, and get them gainfully employed in society. It will generate healthiness. So dismissal is what I aimed at when I'm talking about summary trial. Yes, okay. So that simply just to end up that matter and get done with it. That is what the government just had to do. We don't have alternative. But if they decide to go the other way, they will also reap the consequences. So getting people gainfully employed is very important. We have the National Director of Employment. That agency has been trying its best. It needs to be funded, especially now. Many Nigerians are not having anything to do. Like I said, our expenses increase every day in this country. Income is not coming. Nigerians are passing through hell, except those few who are in the corridors of power that are just having easy access to our money. Although every Nigerian, they buy. Look at how many of us are using our vehicles. All right? You can't fuel it. If you can't to maintenance, get to the spare parts. You can't afford. The other day I was at this place they sell spare parts products in Ogbo. I was shocked to hear that now some people do not change their engine oil except once a year. It's as bad as that. Most of the tires you see are not roadworthy. And these are dangers that in fact, look, my brother, the size of mild steel rods we have, people are using for building now. Building collapse is going to be massive. People are using the kind of rods we use as, let me call it rope before, the rings to hold the pillars. They are using it now as the rods itself that stand for pillars and beams. Go around and see the buildings. Substandard materials are being used because the cost is out of reach. But to say it's out of reach and now we build like this is to bury all of us alive within a short time. So the government should do something drastic. We don't have time.
Well, I must thank you, Mr. Alex Ogbo Esquire, for taking our time to be on the program this morning and speaking objectively to the topic of the day. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I'm always available. Thank you.
Well, this is as much as time will permit for us as we have looked at the case of detained minors following the hashtag End Bad Governance protest.